The skies above northern Alaska bled with streaks of crimson and gold, the auroras dancing wildly like the aftershocks of some ancient god's forgotten fury. Snowflakes tumbled through the broken atmosphere, light as feathers, uncaring of the tension that gripped the humans below. Rowan Thorne stood at the edge of the frozen ridge, wind clawing at his coat as the smoke curled from the valley beneath. What had once been pristine wilderness was now a chaos of shattered metal, sparking conduits, and the charred wreckage of a Delaunay scout ship. The crash had been sudden, no warning, no signal. Just a searing burst of light across the horizon and the dull, thunderous impact of metal against Earth. He had seen the fireball descend while returning from a week-long trek guiding tourists, what was supposed to be a peaceful, disconnected retreat. Instead, he'd ended up hauling himself into a burning crater on instinct alone, lungs scorched, muscles screaming. And in the wreckage, amidst twisted alien plating and unfamiliar glyphs, he had found her. She was tall. That was the first thing his dazed mind could comprehend. A towering silhouette, at least 7 feet in height, lying partially crushed under a slab of silver alloy that had split like a ribcage. Her skin shimmered faintly, a deep violet blue traced with glowing lines that pulsed like veins of moonlight. Blood, black and thick, pooled beneath her. Her breathing was ragged. Rowan didn't think. He'd seen men pinned under rock slides. He knew that look, the slow fading. He shoved the burning debris aside, ignoring the searing pain as it blistered his palms through his gloves. The moment he freed her torso, she jolted, her hand instinctively snapping toward his throat with a strength that lifted him inches from the ground. Her eyes, brilliant, piercing slits of silver, locked onto his. A growl escaped her lips, one hand half formed into a glowing weapon that crackled with energy, trembling. Rowan coughed and choked out the only words that made sense in that surreal moment. "You're not going to die here." Something in his voice, maybe the raw desperation, maybe the simple fact he hadn't run, seemed to reach her. Her weapon flickered out. Her hand released him, and she slumped back, unconscious. He carried her 5 miles on foot. No hover tech, no assistance. Just a harness he improvised from old climbing rope and determination laced with too much adrenaline to question his sanity. She was heavier than she looked, dense muscle and alien armor, and yet he moved like the cold itself chased him. He delivered her to the emergency medical outpost near the ridge base. And that, he assumed, was that. He didn't expect to be summoned a week later by the United Nations Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs. He didn't expect to be interrogated for hours, asked to sign a mountain of confidentiality forms, or questioned on what exactly transpired during contact. And he certainly didn't expect to see her again. Awake this time, propped on a diagnostic platform that hummed softly beneath her as she studied him like he was some kind of strange mineral. She said her name was Valasha Kryn, daughter of the Delaunay High Matriarch, a noble, a warrior, and apparently very upset. "You carried me," she stated, her voice deep and sonorous, the accent thick but elegant. "5 of your miles. Why?" Rowan shifted uncomfortably, standing awkwardly on the far side of the medical chamber, unsure if he was allowed to approach. "You were dying. That was not your duty." He frowned. "I didn't know that. I just saw someone injured and—" "You are aware of the Delaunay customs?" He blinked. "Not really. Why?" She rose, fluid and imposing, her skin catching the light like starlit stone. When she stepped forward, the humans in the room stiffened. Her presence was impossible to ignore, like a predator given form and given grace. When a Delaunay's life is saved at the cost of another's injury, it constitutes the ignition of the first flame. Rowan tilted his head. "That's poetic?" "It is binding." Now he was really lost. Valasha narrowed her eyes, studying him like he had just insulted her bloodline. "You do not understand what you've done. You have initiated a pre-bonding ritual with a member of the high lineage." "I what?" "No, there was no ritual. You carried me," she repeated, slow and deliberate. "You risked pain and frost and fire. You placed my life above your own. That's just basic decency." Rowan half laughed, backing up a step. I wasn't trying to propose or whatever it is you're saying. To us, it is not a proposal. It is a vow. And so began the strangest chapter of Rowan Thorne's already strange life. Despite every official's desperate attempts to de-escalate the misunderstanding, Valasha would not renounce the binding. Nor would she return to the Lani space until it was resolved. She remained on Earth, her status shifting from accident survivor to full diplomat, bringing with her layers of ceremonial importance, military weight, and political heat that singed every bureaucrat who came near her. Rowan tried to avoid the whole mess. He returned to the mountains, went off-grid, declined every interview, blocked every reporter. But she found him again. Of course she did. She stepped into his log cabin without knocking, filling the doorway like a living monolith. The snow was melting off her shoulders, her cloak steaming slightly as she entered. "You are evading," she said simply. Rowan, half-dressed and mid-coffee, nearly choked. "I'm not evading. How'd you find me?" Valasha looked around at the sparse, fire-warmed space. She made a slow circuit, inspecting a handcrafted bow, a cracked photograph of Rowan's parents, and a hunting knife worn with age. "I understand now," she murmured. "What do you understand?" She turned to him, eyes gentler than he had ever seen. "You are not bound by blood or oath. You are bound by action. By choice." He exhaled slowly. That's a decent summary. "I have been taught all my life that choice is weakness," she said. "That strength lies in doing what must be done regardless of feeling. But your species makes choice a kind of strength. You saved me not because of duty, but because you felt it was right." Rowan hesitated. "I couldn't just walk away, Valasha." She stepped closer. "Then we are both caught in something we did not choose, but now must choose how to face." They talked for hours that night. About her world, his world. About the stars. About old losses. Her father had died on the field, her mother's cold expectations forging her into a creature of tradition and blade. Rowan had lost his brother in a fire, and had never stopped blaming himself. Their wounds recognized each other. Over time, she returned often. Sometimes in armor, other times draped in flowing fabrics stitched with symbols of her clan. She brought strange alien fruit, heavy with sweet, starlit juices. He made her stew that she claimed tasted like the first warmth after winter. They taught each other languages. She learned Earth sarcasm. He learned how to read the shift in her eyes when she was tired or lonely. He grew used to her presence like a second gravity in the room, powerful but comforting. One night, as snow curled against the windows and the fire cast shadows on timber walls, Valasha sat across from him, silent. "Are you afraid of me?" she asked suddenly. Rowan looked up from his mug. "Not in the way you mean." "In what way, then?" "I'm more afraid of what I'm starting to feel." Valasha's voice lowered. "And what do you feel, Rowan Thorne?" He hesitated. "I don't know yet, but it's not nothing." Silence stretched between them, but it was not empty. It was the beginning of something dangerous, something sacred. She rose then, approaching him. "On my world, when a bond is declared, it must be fulfilled. But I do not want your fulfillment out of fear or obligation." Rowan stood too. They were nearly chest to chest. He had to tilt his head up to meet her gaze. "I won't say yes until you want it, Valasha. Not because some rule says so, but because you want it." Her markings shimmered faintly. She looked at him as if seeing something rare and precious. "You will wait for me?" He nodded. "As long as it takes." A heartbeat passed. Then another. She leaned in. Her breath touched his lips but stopped just short. "Then I will burn slowly, human, until I am sure." And just like that, she turned and vanished into the snowstorm outside, her cloak vanishing into the white. Rowan stood alone, heart thundering in his chest. And far above them both, the auroras danced, burning brighter than before. The days grew shorter, shadows stretching like reaching fingers across the snow-laden world. Winter in Alaska was never merciful, but Rowan welcomed the cold now. It reminded him she was still out there, somewhere. Training, preparing, waiting. He didn't know what she was waiting for exactly. Maybe for certainty. Maybe for courage. Maybe for something only her people could name. Valasha Kryn hadn't returned since the night she whispered she would burn slowly. That had been 41 days ago. He marked each one. There was no communication, no warning. No flickering signal on the secured comm device the UN had issued him in the event she tried to reach out. The world beyond continued as it always did, rumors of alien treaties, the Lani military demonstrations, hushed whispers about the so-called human exception that had bent the Lani tradition in ways previously thought impossible. Rowan chopped wood each morning, hunted in the hills, fed the fire each night, and sometimes, in the depth of the dark, he thought he heard her voice in the wind. Then came the knock. It wasn't loud. It wasn't urgent. But it wasn't imagined. Rowan opened the cabin door expecting, hoping, Valasha. Instead, he was greeted by two beings cloaked in violet-black ceremonial garb, their helmets designed with crescent-shaped slits. They towered like statues etched from obsidian. Between them stood a human, short, pale, and clearly sweating in the cold. "You are Rowan Thorne?" the human translator asked, glancing at a holographic pad. "Yeah. Who's asking? I've been instructed to escort you to a Lani conclave. Immediate departure. They say the moment has arrived." He narrowed his eyes. "What moment?" The translator gave him a look of immense discomfort. "The public fulfillment of a bonded vow, in front of the assembled Lani highborn." Rowan stared. "She wants me to bond with her. Now." The translator cleared his throat. "Publicly. Yes." Rowan's mouth went dry. "You're sure she asked for this?" "Yes." She was extremely clear. The Lani guard stepped aside as the translator motioned toward the sleek shuttle parked in the clearing just beyond the tree line. Rowan didn't need to pack. Somehow, he already knew this moment had been approaching like a slow avalanche. Every conversation, every glance, every breath shared beneath the stars had been pushing them toward this. He followed. The shuttle was unlike anything he'd seen before. Quiet, smooth, almost like riding a current of air through folding dimensions. The interior was all sleek glass and soft humming crystal veins. He didn't know how long they traveled. Time distorted within the Lani tech. All he knew was when they landed, it was not Earth beneath his feet. They'd brought him to the Lani assembly grounds, what some on Earth referred to as the Skyhold. A place rarely visited by outsiders, and never by uninitiated humans. The sky above was endless black silk, spangled with unfamiliar constellations. Towering stone monoliths pierced the horizon, each etched with glowing glyphs that pulsed faintly in rhythm, like the heartbeat of a world that hadn't decided yet if it trusted him. He was escorted into a domed hall, vast and echoing, lined with elevated balconies where the Lani nobles stood in silent rows, regal, imposing, eyes sharp as blades. At the center of the dais stood Valasha. She wore armor unlike anything she'd ever worn before. Not the battle-scarred plates of a warrior, but ceremonial armor, woven with threads of living light and plates engraved with symbols of her bloodline. Her hair was braided with silver rings, each marked with a different sigil. Her presence filled the room as surely as oxygen. Rowan's heart kicked once, hard. She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she stepped down from the dais and crossed the marble floor toward him, her every step silent but seismic. When she stopped before him, her gaze held none of the softness he remembered. Only purpose. "You came. I told you I'd wait." Her expression cracked, just for a moment, and in that moment he saw it, relief, fierce and wild. "I did not call you lightly," she said. "I didn't come lightly." Valasha extended her hand toward him, palm up. Upon it rested a glowing shard, translucent and shifting with shades of violet and white. A bonding crystal, the highest of the Lani symbols. "You saved me without knowing who I was. You gave pain and strength freely. You treated me as more than blood, more than warrior. You gave me choice." Her voice carried clearly across the hall. "Now I claim you by my own will. And I ask, do you accept the bond?" Rowan didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and placed his palm over the shard. It flared, light washing through both of them like a wave of warmth and lightning. The air crackled. Valasha's markings glowed brighter than ever before, tracing her skin like molten constellations. Her eyes widened as the energy linked them, pulsing with something ancient and deep. He felt it too. Not just the bond, the understanding. He felt her mind brush against his, memories layered like glass. Her first kill in the dust storms of Thaler Vale, the crushing loneliness of palace walls, the scream she never uttered when her father died, the ache she buried when she realized she might never be allowed to love without it becoming a political threat. And in return, she felt him. His grief, his fire, his stubbornness, his humanity. The connection wasn't painful. It was intimate, terrifying, beautiful. When the light faded, the hall was utterly silent. Then, slowly, the nobles began to bow their heads. One by one, Valasha turned to them, voice clear as frost. Let it be known that the vow has been honored. The bond is true. I have chosen the human, not as an obligation, but as mine, and I dare any who would challenge it. A long silence followed. Then an elder Thelani male stepped forward, tall and robed in endless layers of cloth and power. He studied Rowan with eyes like polished steel. The bond is recognized, he said, his voice echoing. And if it is true, then you will not fear what comes next. Valasha looked to Rowan. This part, I did not tell you. Rowan raised a brow. What part? Once bonded, it is customary to demonstrate unity. Demonstrate how? In front of them. A declaration of union. Physically. Rowan's brain stuttered. You mean like, right now? Her expression didn't falter. It is symbolic. It need not be intimate in the way you fear, but it must be seen. The embrace, the joining. You must not hesitate. He looked around at the watching eyes, at the glowing glyphs, at the weight of all of it pressing in. Then he looked at her. I don't care who's watching, he said softly. Just tell me what you need. Valasha extended her arms. Rowan stepped into them. The moment their bodies touched, the glyphs along the walls ignited in a ripple of thunderous resonance. He felt her arms wrap around his back, her chin resting lightly atop his head. The bond shimmered between them, real, raw, undeniable. It wasn't about lust. It wasn't about show. It was about trust. The audience faded. The pressure, the ceremony, the alien judgment, all of it dissolved in the cocoon of that embrace. And when Valasha finally pulled back, her voice was quiet. For him alone. You did not break. Not before them. Not before me. You are no lesser species, Rowan Thorn. I never was, he murmured. She smiled then. A real smile, not the warrior's smirk or the noblewoman's mask. It was soft, vulnerable. You are mine now, she whispered. And you're mine, he said, brushing his thumb gently against her cheek. Above them, the crystal dome split open to reveal the stars. One by one, the Lani nobles began to chant. Not in resistance, but in recognition. And so, under alien constellations and ancient tradition, a human and a Thelani warrior declared something neither of their people had ever dared. That love, real love, didn't bow to species or rules or fear. It just was. The halls of the Skyhold were no longer silent toward Rowan. He walked beside Valasha now, not as an outsider or tolerated anomaly, but as her equal, her bonded. Whispers followed them, but not in contempt. Curiosity, reverence, a slow unraveling of old disbeliefs. The idea of a human partner had once been unthinkable. Now it echoed through the Lani corridors like prophecy. Valasha's hand remained near his always. Not out of possessiveness but protection, both for him and for the statement it made. Her fingers brushed his shoulder when they turned corners. She tilted her head to listen when he spoke softly, sometimes smiling in a way Rowan knew no one else had ever earned. Their bond allowed more than just physical closeness, it wove awareness between them. He felt her before she entered a room. He could sense the moment her thoughts began to spiral and knew when to place a grounding hand on her back. And she, in turn, could tell when he was overwhelmed, confused, or just needed to breathe without the pressure of so many alien expectations. They had only 3 days before their return to Earth. 3 days for Rowan to learn the strange customs of Valash's kind. 3 days to understand what it meant to be joined not just to her, but to her people. It wasn't easy. He found himself in a hall of glass and hovering metal, standing across from a massive creature with 4 arms and a face like carved basalt. Valash's cousin, Thrunak, an enforcer of blood trial oaths. "You bonded with Valasha Kryn," Thrunak said, his voice low and gravel-rich. "She is of the line of High Flame. It is tradition that her bonded endure the trial of resilience." Rowan blinked. "Trial?" Valasha, beside him, stiffened. "He is not Thalani-born. He is bonded. It is enough." Thrunak dropped a weighted staff before him. At the end of the weapon, something pulsed, like a heart trapped in crystal. "It will not wound you permanently," Thrunak said, "but it will burn deep." Rowan picked up the staff without hesitation. Valasha moved to stop him, but he shook his head. "No, I'm not doing this to impress anyone. But if this is part of your world, I'll meet it." The trial was a storm of light and motion. The Thalani guards circled, humming words in their native tongue, and the staff vibrated with each chant. The rite wasn't about combat. It was about resistance, bearing the pain of legacy and still standing tall. When the staff struck his chest, it sent a flood of sharp-hot energy through his body, searing but clean. Rowan's breath caught, but he didn't fall. Not after the first strike or the second. By the third, he was on one knee, sweat trickling down his jaw, but his grip on the staff never loosened. Valasha knelt with him at the end, her hands gripping his as the energy faded. "He has passed," Thrunak announced. "He is not Thalani, but he is flame-forged." Later, in the quiet of their private quarters, she sat beside him on the bed carved from living crystal. Her fingers traced the red imprint still faintly glowing across his chest. "I didn't need you to prove anything," she murmured. "I wasn't proving anything. I was showing up." Her eyes met his, soft and unguarded. "Your world would have spared me that pain, wouldn't it?" "Without question. And I made you face it." "No, you didn't. I chose to." He reached for her hand, pulling her fingers against his lips. "This bond isn't about making you human. It's about us making something new." Valasha leaned into him, resting her forehead against his. "No one has ever said that to me before." They lay together that night, not in fire or frantic need, but in quiet connection. Skin against skin, heartbeat syncing. Her breath slowed only when his hand found the small of her back, warm and reassuring. "This is where I feel strongest," she whispered against his collarbone. "With me. No, with you. There's a difference." By the second day, Rowan noticed something had changed in the way the other Thalani looked at him. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It was respect. A pair of young Thalani acolytes approached him while he studied the glyphs in the lower atrium. They bowed, then sat nearby, watching him with wide, ink-dark eyes. "You do not wear armor, but you are strong," one said. "Not like you think," Rowan replied. "Strength doesn't always come with scars." The second acolyte tilted their head. "But you do have scars. Inside. We feel them." He swallowed, a flicker of discomfort curling through him. The first added, "Do they frighten you?" "They used to. Now," Rowan shrugged. "They remind me that I survived." They stared a moment longer, then smiled, a gesture awkward but genuine. One offered him a folded cloth made of fine white mesh. "What is this?" he asked. "A gift, only given to bonded who earn their place by fire and silence." He accepted it, not understanding the full weight, but grateful. That night, Valasha explained, "They offered you a soul weave. It's one of our rarest fabrics. It binds the memory of a person's courage into its threads. It means they witnessed something sacred in you." He ran his fingers along the delicate weave, stunned. "I didn't even say anything heroic. It wasn't about what you said. It was how you bore the weight of being seen." By the third day, Their return to Earth loomed like a thundercloud. Valasha hadn't spoken about it much, but Rowan could feel her unease building. Her touch lingered longer. Her glances became heavier. She moved closer to him in quiet moments, as if memorizing the shape of his presence. "Do you regret it?" he asked her that evening. They stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing chasm of the Skyhold's heart. The stars stretched out in all directions, infinite and watching. "No," she said. "I ache with how much I don't regret it." "Then why do you seem so far away?" She looked down. "Because when we return, everything will change again. The eyes of both worlds will be on us. I fear they will try to pull us apart." "They can't," Rowan said softly. "Not unless we let them." She turned, and her voice dropped into something fierce. "Then promise me." He blinked. "Promise you what?" She stepped in close, pressing her palm to his chest, where the mark from the staff still pulsed faintly. "Promise me that when the time comes, when it matters most, you will not hide what we are. That you will speak it, stand for it, even when they question it." Rowan reached up, took her wrist, and held her hand over his heart. "I promise." She swallowed, and her lips parted, breath catching like wind in a storm. "Then you must be ready," she whispered, "because when we return, I will challenge everything, and I need you to be with me in full view." He leaned in and kissed her, slow and steady, no rush or fire, just presence. "I'm not going anywhere." 3 hours before departure, Valasha called together the Delani inner court. She stood in the center of the Skyhold, Rowan beside her. "I go to Earth not as a scout," she said, her voice echoing off ancient walls, "but as bonded. The human world will see us together, and we will not cloak it in shadows." An elder asked, "And if Earth does not prove?" She turned her head slightly. "Then we make them understand. Just as I was made to understand that fire can take many forms." Her hand found Rowan's, and this time he was the one who pulled her forward, kissed her in front of them all, without hesitation, without apology. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Valasha's lips curved, eyes gleaming. "You promised to bond with me?" she murmured again, voice rich and slow. "And you said to do it in front of everyone," he replied with a smirk. "I think they got the message." She laughed then, a sharp, surprised sound full of relief and thunder. When they stepped onto the return shuttle, the skies above Thaler Vale lit with the crackling flames of 1,000 ceremonial beacons. An ancient ritual reawakened, a new future on the cusp of ignition. The arrival back on Earth did not go unnoticed. Valasha stepped off the Delani shuttle first, her tall, statuesque frame drawing the attention of every soldier, diplomat, and civilian gathered on the landing platform. She wore ceremonial armor laced with star-forged threads, its design a merging of Delani authority and something new, something human. By her side, Rowan followed, unarmored but far from unguarded. His calm, steady presence was a shield of its own. Valasha did not hide her hand reaching for his. She held it openly, proudly, as if daring the world to speak against them. The broadcast reached global networks in seconds. Cameras zoomed in. Voices buzzed across news feeds. And in the heart of the human government compound, the leaders who had once scowled at their closeness now stood in stunned, uneasy silence. Ambassador Tyrion, sharp-eyed and unsmiling, was the first to speak. "Valasha Kryn of the Delani Dominion," she said, her voice cutting the air. "You were given diplomatic clearance under the understanding that neutrality would be maintained." "I was neutral," Valasha said, stepping forward, "until neutrality became a lie." Tyrion's eyes narrowed. "And this man? He is no diplomat." "No," Valasha agreed. "He is better. He is true. And he is mine." The word hit the gathered officials like a seismic ripple. "Are you aware of the implications?" Tyrion asked. "This will fracture alliances. Nations barely accept their own differences. What do you think they'll do with this?" Rowan stepped forward now, his voice quiet but certain. "They'll adapt. Because they always do." Change doesn't wait for comfort. And love doesn't ask permission. The silence that followed was deafening. Valasha's fingers tightened around his. She could feel the tension crackling in the air, but her gaze didn't falter. Tyrion looked between them. Then you're making this official? Valasha smiled, a slow, fierce grin that showed the faint shimmer of her fangs. He already bore flame for me, faced my people, passed the trials. What more would you ask? You stood before your people, Tyrion said. Now stand before ours. Word spread fast. An emergency summit was called. Leaders of over 30 nations gathered in the assembly hall in Geneva. The event was broadcast live. There would be no edits, no delays. Rowan stood with Valasha at the center of the stage. The moderator, a tall man with a weary expression, stepped forward. You claim to be bonded, not just politically or emotionally, but spiritually. Yes, Valasha replied. By the Lani rite and flame. And human tradition? He asked, turning to Rowan. Rowan nodded. By choice, by action, by the clearest truth I've ever known. The moderator paused. Then do it. If you mean to defy centuries of separation and hesitation, show us. Declare it in front of the world. Valasha turned to Rowan, and the air shifted between them. Her fingers found the edge of his collar, and she pulled him close. Her voice, quiet and low, trembled with power. You promised to bond with me, she said. Now do it in front of everyone, human. The whole hall held its breath. Rowan didn't flinch. He reached into his coat and pulled out something small, woven and white. The soul weave, gifted by the Vellani acolytes. Slowly, deliberately, he tied it around her wrist in a loop, then did the same with another strip around his own. We match, he said, voice barely more than a whisper. Now and always. Then, in full view of humanity's leaders, cameras flashing like lightning storms, he kissed her. Not just a meeting of lips, but of stories. Of courage and patience and everything they had endured to reach this moment. People gasped. Some turned away in disbelief. Others clapped, hesitant at first, then louder. A few stood in awkward silence. And then one voice rose from the gallery. Young, male, curious. Is this allowed? Valasha pulled back from Rowan just enough to smile and look out over the stunned audience. It's not about allowed. It's about earned. The media world exploded. Commentators argued, alliances were strained, but amidst the chaos something unexpected happened. People began asking why not instead of how dare they. Across both human and the Lani spheres, discussions lit up. Intercultural classes overflowed. A wave of curiosity replaced suspicion. Even schools began updating their materials, children fascinated not by war, but by the possibility of something better. Valasha and Rowan stayed at the edge of the media whirlwind, refusing to sell their bond for interviews or spectacle. Instead, they quietly continued their work, bridging gaps, attending peace meetings, training hybrid negotiation teams, helping soldiers learn not just tactics but understanding. Their love didn't end with a kiss. It deepened in shared meals, late-night talks under starlight, and mornings where Valasha learned how to make coffee just the way Rowan liked it. Too bitter for her taste, but perfect in the way he smiled when he drank it. She taught him the Vellani dance of flame, a ritual of movement and trust. He taught her how to laugh with abandon, to let go of her relentless composure and just be. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Valasha took Rowan back to the Skyhold. There, surrounded by her kin, she presented him with a blade forged from star ore, not as a weapon, but a symbol. It is tradition, she told him, for the bonded to carry the other's legacy. Rowan held the blade, light and strong, and nodded. You are my legacy, he whispered, and she, fierce and tall and proud, smiled like he'd given her the galaxy. When they returned to Earth again, things were different. People no longer stared. Or if they did, it was with wonder, not wariness. Children pointed, smiled, waved. One elderly woman stopped them at a cafe and said, I never thought I'd live to see this. My son married a woman from another country, and that caused enough trouble. But you too. You give me hope. Rowan smiled and looked to Valasha. Hope's the best thing to build with. And so they did. A small house on the edge of the Pacific, half grown into the landscape, half shaped by the Lani living crystal. It smelled like earth and stars. Inside, a garden bloomed, not just of flora, but of shared roots. Valasha often stood by the ocean watching waves crash. She would whisper her people's old chants into the wind, then turn to find Rowan bringing her tea, barefoot in the sand. You still believe we did the right thing? He'd ask sometimes. And she'd always answer the same way. I didn't choose right or wrong. I chose you. Their story didn't end in fireworks. It ended and began again, in the quiet certainty of two beings from different worlds building one of their own, together. Because once, a proud alien girl demanded, asterisk, you promised to bond with me. Now do it in front of everyone human, asterisk. And the human? He did.